the Space Shuttle Discovery returning to the space station, paving the way for future missions beyond.
Welcome. This is the Echo Modernist Podcast. Our philosophy is based on sound science and free from the outdated dogmas of the 20th century.
Hi, this is Gabe Ignetti.
And this is Rick Maltese.
And this is the Echo Modernist Podcast. We have today Eric Meyer and Tay Stevenson here from Generation Atomic, a very interesting and new organization. And we have invited them to speak with us and tell us a little more about what they are doing, which is very exciting. And let's start with Eric. Eric, could you tell us a little about yourself and the organization?
Absolutely. Thanks, Gabe. Yeah, so I'm from rural southwestern Minnesota, a place often referred to as the Saudi Arabia of wind energy. Still, I think just growing up in that area got me thinking about climate change and about clean energy. Also, all the time you hear about ethanol subsidies. It's really key to a lot of the livelihood of some of the farmers down there. And so I think that kind of worked its way into my mind as an issue to think about. I think I had a rather pessimistic viewpoint what was possible to do with the energy sources we had available. I'd always assumed that nuclear wasn't even an option. The Simpsons made that pretty clear to me. And then so I decided to go to school to be an opera singer, potentially a music teacher, just like you, Gabe. And I think it was about year 3, I saw a video on molten salt reactors saying, check this out, we might be able to power the future with old nuclear waste and weapons. That was really kind of a life-changing video for me. It was a TED Talk, and it's silly to say, but that was a point in my life that began to fork down a different road, that to be becoming a professional nuclear advocate in a way, and now starting Generation Atomic with Tay back in November here. And yeah, the reason why we founded it was the whole premise was that there's a lot of great nuclear messaging out there, and we have the facts on our side. But this messaging, these facts are getting stuck in an echo chamber, or even as our board member Rod Adams would say, they're being shouted into a pillow. We're not doing the person-to-person contact that we've seen historically to be effective in changing hearts and minds about a subject. We're not doing that in nuclear, and there's no concerted effort to grow our numbers so that we might have more power and be able to affect legislation and make permanent positive change. And that's why Tay and I put our heads together back in late November, early December, and started executing this mission to build the grassroots constituency that would be necessary to substantive long-term change around nuclear and do it at time scale that we need to save the planet.
Eric, you had an excellent initiation into grassroots building with Michael Schellenberger in Environmental Progress.
Yeah, Rick, thanks for the question. Yeah, Environmental Progress was amazing. Michael gave me a call, I think it was in April or early May last year, and he basically said, hey, we got this idea to organize a pro-nuclear march to try to save Diablo Canyon and really, jumpstart this pro-nuclear environmental movement. And I was working for a nurses union at the time. It was a great job, great pay, great benefits, and kind of an ideal situation in a lot of ways. I had 2 professional singing gigs, and I gotta say it was the easiest hard decision I've ever made to think about it for about, I don't know, an hour, if that, maybe 15 minutes, and decide, all right, I'm gonna pack up all the stuff in my car in a week, drive out to Berkeley, and work with Michael to start building the grassroots on the West Coast to save Diablo Canyon. And throughout the course of my 8 months there, I organized 3 large-scale pro-nuclear actions. The first was that 5-day climate march, the March for Environmental Hope, that started in San Francisco, where we sang in the halls of the Sierra Club, the Battle Hymn of the Atom. We did a sit-in in front of Greenpeace and the NRDC, and then over the course of 5 days, made it all the way to Sacramento at the Lands Commission meeting where they were making the decision to shut down Diablo early and permitting it out for that period of time. And then there were the thing, Save the Nukes rally in New York, where we were able to get nuclear included in the clean energy standard and save 3 plants from premature shutdown there. A victory that we've seen now is fleeting and temporary as Exelon is forced to fight off lawsuits from fossil fuel corporations and anti-nuclear groups. And we're seeing similar things happen in Illinois as well, where we did the Save the Nuke Summit in March there. And again, we were able to save a couple plants, but we're seeing court challenges. And the reason I bring up the court challenges is that when you do the kind of organizing that I did there, where it's very fleeting, it's more like it's almost like a temporary publicity stunt in a way. These actions, it's just a flash in the pan thing. So it gives you an advantage for a period of days or weeks as you get a little bit of press around it. It's a temporary win. So it was with that knowledge and that insight that I got together with Tay and we talked about how do we build the grassroots long term and keep these people engaged so that they're there when we need them. And if a lawsuit mounted by the fossil fuel industry or by anti-nuclear groups happen, with the push of a button, we can get people to turn up and take our side and speak to the truth about nuclear power and why we need it. Yeah, so I want to talk a little bit about the difference between organizing and mobilizing. Because even when I was working as an organizer, it had never been spelled out to me for a while, surprisingly. So what we did with Environmental Progress is very much mobilizing, right? We knew we had supporters out there. We just had to go find them and put them on an email list and tell them where to go and what to do, and then keep encouraging them to go. Just turn them out, right? What we're doing with Generation Atomic is more organizing. So we'll go meet people who didn't know they had an interest in the issue, didn't know much about it at all, but they have other values, like they care about jobs in their community and they want to keep their electricity bills low, or they want things that are good for the environment but haven't heard about the full suite of options. So we know there are a lot of people out there who are passionate about those things and others. And the way our model is set up, we're able to identify what it is that person cares about at their door relatively quickly, like in the first minute or so, and then tie that issue to nuclear power and the importance of keeping existing reactors running and laying the groundwork for advanced nuclear. And that's how we take our movement from maybe, if we can get everybody, all the pro-nuclear people in the US who would advocate for it, I'm guessing that number is under 2,000, right? It's not a lot. You look on Facebook, look at the people who are active, people who are writing about this. It's not a lot of people. But Tay and I feel like with the work that we're doing, we can grow that number into the tens of thousands, even in the time span of under a year. That's certainly what we're projecting out in some of these states that we have planned actions. And then once you get tens of thousands on board and you have a way to communicate with them all with the push of a button, then you really have power to make lasting, sustainable change.
Have you heard of the 100th monkey? Have you ever heard of that?
No.
Well, it's a story about how, and it really happened in roughly the 100th monkeys, that when you reach a certain point in presenting an idea, a new way of doing things, it all of a sudden just takes off like wildfire. And this has been a tendency in human history to happen. And they've noticed it happens even in animals when they learn new things. And it is an example with a monkey, and that's the story. So it's a good thing to keep in mind, even though our numbers are small.
And to kind of take off from the concept of the 100 monkeys, do our organizing training, we always show the Derek Sievers video on how to start a movement. And really, that's kind of what we look at our work as doing. And just very briefly, I encourage anyone to go onto YouTube, just search how to start a movement. It's always the first video that pops up. It's another TEDx talk. You'll see that there's a theme here. Eric and I tend to get inspired by TEDx talks. But really what it is it's a video of a guy who is at some festival out in the field. He's just shirtless and dancing. And sure enough, another guy shows up and they start to dance, and another guy shows up, and the three of them are just kind of out there hanging out. And then like 3 people show up, and then another like 5 people show up, and then another 10 people show up. And within about a minute, there are people from every angle within the camera just running to this space to just to dance. That's kind of the tipping point. And pretty soon, by the end of the video, all you can see from one edge of the frame to the other edge is just a group of people doing this very simple dance, but they're all kind of united together. And that's really our mindset here is educate people. Eric and I are a couple of wingnut shirtless dancing guys, but what we're doing is simple. There's not a complicated script. You don't have to have a degree in nuclear physics or nuclear engineering. You just have to have passion and tell your story. Part of Generation Atomic's work is to support people and enable people and give them some important tools to simply tell their story, tell it in a compelling way, and bring more people kind of to the dance. And I think that's really what the nuclear movement really needs.
Tell us about your app. Is it ready to go?
Yep. So the app, we released the closed beta of the app last week on Monday. So people have been playing around with it. We wanted to launch the beta, even the beta, with quite a few options for people to get involved advocacy-wise. So our initial campaign goal, that goal is to call your senator and ask them to support NECA, which is the Nuclear Energy Innovation Capabilities Act. And that bill would direct the NRC to lower some of the barriers that these advanced reactor companies are dealing with right now, and also put the NRC on a stricter timeline as far as approving these advanced designs. So it's obviously a good piece of legislation to help with American competitiveness, to help with climate change, all that kind of stuff. And looking at this, we have a goal of 100 people to make these calls. Looks like we got 25 so far. So once we start pushing this out to the larger pro-nuclear community, once we start advertising it, and once we start using this app at the door, because it does replace the clipboard in our canvassing operations, then we're going to see the user base grow even more and our power to influence legislation. That's obviously just one of the features. Lobby, there's 3 other categories. Learn, where people watch videos or read articles about pro-nuclear content, or even eventually about improving your advocacy skills. Then there's share, which is typical stuff you would do on Facebook. Share articles, share pro-nuclear memes. One of the higher point values for share is share a selfie with a legislator. Lobby, make an appointment, go to your local legislator and meet with them, and then you can take a picture. Obviously, there's a lot of steps that go into that. So there's learn, lobby, share, and advocate is the last one. And under that category would fall things like going out and knocking on doors for nuclear, or attending a hearing, for example, that you knew that nuclear was going to come up and they're looking for public testimony, and actually going to that place physically, using your phone's GPS to check in at that location for a large point bonus. So there's 4 different categories.
Can you also access your talking points? Can you copy and paste your notes or an email, for example?
Could you share talking points through the app? Oh, absolutely. Yep. And you can. So yeah, that's how the call your senator thing works. Is it has the script saying a little bit about the bill and why the senator should support it, and you can just have the convenience of reading that if you want to. If you're more studied on the issue, we encourage people to have conversations about it and take a deeper dive. We'll certainly provide resources. In the same way, when we're going to be asking people to show up and testify on the behalf of bills, we'll provide a knowledge source and kind of the basics around that legislation. So not everybody has to be an expert. The whole premise is just lowering the barriers to nuclear advocacy.
What if I wanted to get the senator's email?
Well, since this is probably coming out in a few days, you got your phones out, ladies and gentlemen. If you got an Android phone, go to the Google Play Store, or if you have iPhone, go to the App Store. Just type in Generation Atomic, then you can download the app. And then rather than having to manually type in the phone number of Congress and then go through an automated prompt. You just click the call your senators and ask them to support NECA and provide you a script. Moreover, then we'll track your service to our cause with and you get a nice point bonus for that and increase your standing in the community. Keep working your way up the chain to get some different badge levels and eventually unlock things like T-shirts and hats and the like. So
I'm still waiting for my prize.
Rick, yeah, are you at a high enough level? Yeah,
I enjoyed doing the quiz.
yeah, right.
You got the app already. I've yet to download it, and I will. Right after this podcast, in fact.
Yep, Rick's got 735 points right now, atomic points.
Wow.
So he's number 25 on the leaderboards. I just looked it up.
Well, I got to catch up to you guys.
Right.
Talk a little about Washington if you want.
Sure. So, obviously this march has a wider scope, right? With everything that's happening, the Trump administration, we see a lot of funding for scientific programs at risk. We see the Scott Pruitt looking at large cuts in the EPA. Rex Tillerson, there's a lot of overt skepticism about man-made climate change coming out of the White House right now, and that certainly underscores the March for Science. At the same time, we have Bill Nye named as a honorary co-chair, and he's certainly exhibited some anti-science tendencies in his lines about nuclear. He has a full episode where he's departing from his usual pretty scientifically grounded messaging and going wading deep into hypotheticals about what might happen at Yucca Mountain, which is only 100 miles away from Las Vegas. It's like he expects storage cast to grow legs and sprint down the highway and run headfirst into a casino or something. So I think it presents an opportunity for our movement to point to the empirical data in a very gentle and subtle way, and just have regular conversations with people about the importance of our technology and looking at it with the scientific method at this juncture in our species history. So that's the question we certainly hope to introduce as we're there demonstrating with the other folks.
You could always say you have a bunch of science guys.
Yes.
That's
Not
have
just Bill
different
Nye.
opinions.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Now, you know what? There's something that's positive about that march concerning nuclear power, because if you go to their webpage, their logo has a big atomic symbol on it. I don't know if you knew that. So, I think it would be a good thing to go to. I would like to add something to that, and we're going to repeat this in the end because it bears repeating, but this is a perfect opportunity, and we're going to take it, us eco-modernists and the Eco-Modernist podcast, we're going to be acting as a clearinghouse. We are encouraging, if you cannot go and meet Tay and Eric in Washington, which we encourage you to do, we will be acting as a clearinghouse to get eco-modernists together in all the cities for both the climate march, which is on the 29th, which we should all be attending, as well as the science march, which will be on the 22nd. Those will be in cities throughout the world, in major cities, both of these marches. This is a golden opportunity because we need to move from Facebook to face-to-face. We need to build ties. Eco-modernism and Generation Atomic, it needs to be there on the ground. And if we're not there and visible to the environmental movement, especially, then the whole rap will be renewables, 100% renewables, and all that will be undisputed. And we shouldn't be put off of the idea that we are dividing that movement, because we can be a force multiplier.
That was really well said.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah.
So what kind of schedule do you have before April 22nd?
Yeah, so we have a few things planned for the march. On the 21st, we're hoping people will get into town on the evening of the 20th. It's Alvin Weinberg's birthday. Maybe we're going to celebrate a little bit. And On the 21st will be a day of legislative visits up on the Hill, and we'll have folks kind of storm the Hill and equip them with some talking points to lobby their legislators for nuclear legislation that's in the hopper right now. In the late afternoon, early evening, we'll be making signs and also doing an advocacy training that will be designed to help people have those quick, easy conversations about nuclear and kind of the larger climate change question and the larger pro-science question. We'll be training people how to negotiate that conversation in kind of easygoing way while making signs, and then kind of dinner and drinks. And then the next day, we'll meet at 9 o'clock in the National Mall. And 10 o'clock, we step off for the march, I believe. I think there's some teach-ins and things happening there as well. So that's the rough outline. We'll have a little more specifics, certainly, as we get a little bit closer.
You'll probably have some excellent guest speakers.
Yeah, definitely.
I mean, with all the highly qualified engineers and scientists that are part of this, they're bound to get some good people.
Yeah, yep. And we got some of those invitations out there to prominent people in the nuclear community. I'm hoping we can get some. A lot of them are based on the East Coast, so it's not too far of a hike. And hope to get some strong support. So we reached out to the organizers for a potential partnership. They responded that they were very happy that we were doing pro-nuclear advocacy and offered to host us as an official partner. So we're now up on their website as official partners in the March for Science.
Fantastic.
I think you guys are well positioned since you're out there in the field, in the public eye, more than many of us, to help these pro-nuclear groups unite, be a common voice, perhaps speak on our behalf. What do you say to that?
All these groups are doing great work, and the problem is there's not a great platform for it all to come through and get out into the rest of the world. And that's part of what we're trying to do and what we're trying to provide through app and our on the ground canvassing model. So we think in a lot of ways that Atomic Action can be an area for just various pro-nuclear groups to be in collaboration with each other without having a formal system or a formal agreement of collaboration necessarily. We want to make sure that we're all swimming the same direction.
And you have a regional plan, a plan to go state to state. Is that right?
Yeah, yep. Because that's where we're seeing that these battles have to be fought and won right now. It's with deregulated energy markets. It's these states with energy policies that are hostile towards nuclear, if not overtly, then covertly, by basically advantaging everything else. Work has to be done in Ohio and Pennsylvania and Connecticut. We're going to play defense in New York, New Jersey. There's a lot of places that have nuclear reactors that are under threat, and the political calculus is slightly different. The legislative framework is slightly different. And that's why we need a lot of people to make this thing happen.
Okay, let me ask you something, Eric. The Citizens Climate Lobby is trying to get the carbon fee and dividend going, which would be a big boon for nuclear. Would you guys be supporting that as well as being related to the cause of nuclear power and making it more economical?
Yeah, I mean, I personally would. Our board hasn't voted on having that be like an official policy position. It's not on our website or anything like that. But I can say, and I think Tay would agree, that any market-based solution that shifts how we value energy to reliable and low carbon would be a good thing. Because right now, the fossil fuel industry doesn't have to pay for their waste. They can just shoot it up into the sky, and they're not held to the same standards and accountability that nuclear is, and they should. Knowing what we now know about the long-term impacts, climate change, they absolutely should. And if we can't make a nuclear reactor that's cheaper than coal, then we need to fix the market. So I'm not sure which one of those things is going to happen first. Reading the tea leaves with the current administration, I think a carbon fee and dividend is dead in its tracks until at least 2018 and probably until 2020. So it might very well be by the time that the political sphere is ready for a piece of legislation like that, we have advanced reactors. We'll see what happens.
Yeah, the states might have initiatives in the future, hopefully, like Seattle did. So
Yeah, and you remember that their ballot initiative was defeated soundly.
well, partially was because of the environmental movement, ironically, and really disgracefully. But that's another issue.
How about supporting a policy that calls nuclear energy renewable energy? They're doing that in at least 2 or 3 states. I've heard that Arizona, maybe Idaho, and possibly Ohio are going to be, if they haven't already taken that policy.
That's going to be a policy framework that we should pursue in a lot of states. Like I think Minnesota would be a great one. California down the road would be a huge coup. If we're able to get nuclear included into clean energy standards, and I personally don't care if we just call it clean energy. If people still want to say it's not renewable, I don't really care about the semantics as long as we agree that it is one of the least environmentally invasive forms of energy and it belongs in the same category as quote unquote renewables. So yeah, whatever's the best way to get to that is the way I want to go. There's no established definition. Exactly. The one we've been working from is clean energy is energy that doesn't shoot particulates and carbon emissions up into the air. That's kind of where we've been drawing the line. Then it's an interesting question because if you go back to the mines, the tellurium mines and the dysprosium and neodymium and everything you need for renewable technologies, it's really hard to extract that stuff in a sustainable way. And typically we've just been externalizing it to China and forgetting about it. I do think it is a question that the environmental community needs to grapple with.
I think there's a problem with the perception of nuclear energy in the way that it contrasts with wind and solar and its abilities. What is not understood well enough is that poorer nations that are coming out of poverty, like China and India, they're not going to be content with wind and solar. We need to set an example here. We don't even realize that we may be without energy periods. There was an interesting article just put in the Canadian Energy Issues with Steve Applin talking about us having brownouts and blackouts during this summer months because now we have so much wind and solar interfering with the grid system. It's a kind of a wake-up call, but people aren't quite there yet. They're not waking up.
Mm-hmm. Yep, exactly. We got to get them there. I mean, no matter, Tay and I talking about it all the time. No matter how many targeted ads or how many times the existing pro-nuclear community shares things with their limited networks, we're making very small progress just at the margins, of picking off a few people here and there. We're not growing our movement at the speed we need to and giving people the tools they need to join our cause. That's a big piece of why we did this app here. So not only can people learn more about the subject, they can learn more about the technology and then learn more about how to better advocate for it and then go out there and actually do it and get recognized for that hard work and the importance of it. We're hoping this app can be a really big game changer and empowering people to make a difference around nuclear energy.
So we want to raise the profile of nuclear advocacy. It's about sort of these values-based conversational exchanges with just normal, regular folks. One of the reasons why the nuclear movement needs something like this is that the community is very small and fairly insular. The way that Generation Atomic changes minds is by having it's just conversations at the doors, conversations via social media, and really sort of intentionally pushing those things out there.
Yeah, one-on-one.
One-on-one, one on two or three. What we want to do, like, for example, when we're talking about events, are like community think and drinks. A group of people come to a local pub and we have a discussion. By framing things always very positively, by looking at nuclear as a part of the energy mix, our messaging is quite straightforward in that, look, nuclear is a viable part of what we're trying to do as an entire species moving forward. And it's something that we've got to embrace. And it's something, quite frankly, we've got to talk to our neighbors, our friends, our family about. When we go to a door or we make a phone call, we promote content on the app or develop a script to call a congressman, we're always very concerned with let's meet the people where they're at. And that approach of coming to them and meeting them where they are is incredibly important. One of the things that I think a lot of the times we hear as a critique of our approach, a lot of folks will talk about social media and saying, why don't we just really try to get a Twitter storm going or get a hashtag trending or invest in Facebook ads? That mindset of sort of the media mobilization, what I would characterize as a mindset that says we have now reached the point technologically where we don't need to talk to people face to face anymore. We were beyond that. My tongue-in-cheek way of responding is I grew up in Minnesota. I grew up playing football. I'm a Minnesota Vikings fan. Gabe, if I asked you to pull up your Facebook news feed, how many articles are going to be on there about the Minnesota Vikings? Probably none, unless I'm posting about them and I'm your only friend on Facebook who's a Minnesota Vikings fan. There are a lot of people out there that unless I, in a conversation, talk about the Minnesota Vikings, that's never going to be a part of their daily experience.
Sure, I see what you're saying. Having something like the local sports team being aware and being able to share something that you have in common will help that new potential supporter of nuclear energy to be more open to listening to what you have to say. That's a good point. Very good point.
Exactly. One of my hobbies is I keep bees. For whatever reason, I've got like 3 or 4 friends who are all beekeepers. And of course, I like all of their posts about beekeeping. So I see, probably once a week, some article about beekeeping. Now that I've started to work in nuclear for over the last 4 or 5 months, I'm really getting a lot more content about nuclear. I'm also adding more friends. Rick, Gabe, I think we're both friends on Facebook. I follow the Eco-Modernist podcast. I'm a part of the Nuke Warriors, and I see a lot of stuff from Meredith Angwin. Now, because I've engaged in this community, I'm getting more content about nuclear. We have to accept that nuclear is vital to ensuring that in the future, pragmatically speaking, we can be carbon free.
All right, that's a great thought to end on. And with that, I'd like to thank both Eric and Tay. But one thing before we end, we cannot leave without hearing Mr. Eric Meyer's golden voice. And I know you have a song for us, Eric.
Oh,
you know what
please,
I'm talking
yes,
about.
please, Eric.
Go, Eric.
All right, sounds good. Thank you. All right, here we go. Listen, friends, to what I'm saying. We must stop playing with our futures. This is the moment. This is the moment when we all decide to fight as one for the earth. There is a chance to save a species. We must unite as one. Join voices loud and strong for the earth and future generations. Now's our last chance to take a stand. Come on, we can. Come on, we can. Nuclear power holds the key to universal prosperity. It is nuclear energy we must embrace for the human race. And if we build it, history will show it was the right way to go.
Bravo.
Bravissimo.
Bravissimo.
Bravo, bravo. And now for our final thoughts.
Our message to our listeners is simple. There's a big difference between knowing what needs to be done and doing what needs to be done. And we applaud Generation Atomic for getting out there and doing it.
You have a role to play here. Your voice is important, and that without you, we won't be able to do this. This is an open call for anyone and everyone hearing this to join us and hundreds of other engineers and scientists at the March for Science on Earth Day on April 22nd and stand up for nuclear. To join Generation Atomic and to pick your t-shirt size out, go to generationatomic.org/March4Nuclear. So hope to see you on the app and hope to see you at the march.
But if you can't go to Washington, you can still bring our cause out into the sunlight.
The March for Science will be taking place in every major city, and we are encouraging all our eco-modernist friends to get out there and make a difference.
The Eco-Modernist podcast crew will be acting as a clearinghouse to bring together all our eco-modernist friends for both the March for Science on April 22nd and the Worldwide 2017 Climate March on April 29th. To find out more about being part of these events, please contact us at ecomodernistpodcast@gmail.com. And that's it for our show today.
This has been the Echo Modernist Podcast. We want to thank you for listening. You're welcome to join us on Facebook and to subscribe to us on iTunes and YouTube. This is Gabe Ignetti.
And this is Rick Maltese.
We'll be seeing you till next time.